Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with a discussion about the Empire in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. And in this video I want to talk about the best legendary lord of the Empire. There's only really 3 campaigns that are worth playing for the Empire right now. It's Balthazar Gelt, it's Karl Franz, and it's Elspeth von Draken. Volkmar and Marcus Wolfhard do have some fairly serious issues, and maybe at one point Creative Assembly will fix those issues, maybe they won't. But let's start talking about Balthazar Gelt. Well, the first thing to know about his campaign is that it starts as a bit of an objective campaign. So as you're fighting the burning nomads over here in this province in the Broken Lands of Tianli, as you take territory over here, you have a couple of dilemmas with Xiao Ming, the Iron Dragon. You can either have a really good relationship with him, or you can kind of pursue a middle path, or you can end up pissing him off. For the first choice, I would generally recommend going for the supplies, because getting that settlement to tier 2 as quickly as possible is generally going to be a fairly sizable benefit in your campaign, because it will allow you to get things like pistoliers, engineers. You already start with the captain, so that is a very good advantage early on. Now, once this faction is eliminated, generally by having them being destroyed in the bamboo crossing, you'll get a choice of either staying in a cafe and being friendly with cafe, specifically Xiao Ming, or pissing off cafe, in which case you might go to war with cafe, or going back to the Empire and losing every bit of territory that you have over here in cafe. But notably, this only includes territory in cafe. So things like the Mountains of Morn, a Noblar country, or even in the Dragon Isles, that will not be given to Cathay if you return to the Empire. The territory would all be given to Xiao Ming. Also, crucially, you can sell all of this territory or abandon it, so Cathay gets nothing. The reason you might want to do so is that the Temple of Elemental Winds has a really powerful benefit over here through the temple itself that gives you mastery of elemental winds for battle wizards as well as arcane essays. So that was one of the main decisions that you get with Balthazar Gelt. If you return to the Empire, you also get a very substantial benefit of not having upkeep for 10 turns, getting population surplus whenever you take a settlement, construction benefits, having all of your armies report in the Reichland province. From there, you can basically conquer the entire empire, including Elspeth, to maybe farm her for her defeat trait, which actually is a really good one, and she can recover from wounds reasonably quick, so you can actually take advantage of that, provided she has a decent enough level. Now, in terms of Gelt's unique campaign mechanics, it's all about mages. So you have all of the schools of magic of the Empire available through the colleges of magic. Makes sense, since Gelt is the supreme patriarch. And what this allows you is doing 2 things. One, it gives you access to the ability of recruiting a mage in any single settlement that you own. In fact, with Gelt, it's quite very possible to spend your entire campaign in Cathay and still get territory in the Empire through confederations, because you'll either see them through your quest battles, or you'll see them through the Gotrek and Felix battle, or you'll see them through the Cathay and caravans, provided you have a good relationship with them. So you can confederate one of the minor factions of the Empire. And the important thing about these mages, they start with full movement range. So when you get one of these mages available in your campaign, they're ready to use immediately. This gives you a significant defensive benefit when you're playing a Gelt campaign, because any settlement that gets attacked, you can just get a lord, and you can get a bunch of mages to give to that lord to help him out. And you get more hero capacity whenever you use this ability. The second thing to talk about the colleges of magic are the kind of benefits you get for mages, be it items or temporary abilities for a particular army. So for instance, stock stands for a target army with a great wizard, or an army ability cataclysm spell available. There's various options over here, like reducing armor by -30 for enemy units, generating gold every single turn through transmutation with Gelt specifically. So Gelt has more money than all the other Imperial factions in the game. He has more mages than all the other Imperial factions in the game, and he has that kind of dilemma in his campaign. In terms of action effects, he gets hero recruit rank +2 for battle wizards, and a Winds of Magic benefit for each wizard lord or hero in an army. Now, Gelt is the only, well, Gelt and Elspeth are the only wizard lords available at the moment. Maybe Creative Assembly does do another DLC which will add them, though I don't necessarily think that's necessary. I personally don't really care too much about using wizard lords in general. I prefer heroes for magic. In terms of Gelt himself, he gets 20 armor for his army, Winds of Magic benefit for a Lore of Metal, experience gain for all spellcasters in army. Say hello to the Spellcaster Doomstack if you're playing Gelt. Then you get Tempered Dara, physical resistance, more armor in radius, attrition benefits, casualty replenishment, plague reduction benefit, explosive missile damage for Hellstorm rocket batteries to all armies, and missile explosion radius for Hellstorm rocket batteries in all armies. That's pretty crazy. And then you get an extra hero recruit rank for battle wizards faction-wide, as well as some hero action benefits. And Winds of Magic, -2 for Lore of Metal spells, and -25% cooldown to Lore of Metal spells. And you, of course, have these quest items, but you don't just have these quest items, you also look at the Lore of Metal, and you have a bunch of items that can be acquired, like 2 items that can be acquired for Gelt, so a weapon and an armor, so you can make an entire freaking set over here for Gelt to use during the course of your campaign. That is extremely powerful and very, very, very useful for him to have. A final benefit to talk about Gelt is that you do get unique research that gives you more arcane essays through battles. That's all well and good, but it also gives you ability uses for those kind of cataclysm spells in a campaign. And all the Electrocount State Troopers are unlocked for 7,500 gold that you research in a single turn. So just get the gold, you get it done. By the way, I'd recommend finding this battle manually, then taking the Temple of Elemental Winds. Very, very easy. You also have the ability, of course, recruiting Ogre mercenaries from Greases, or maybe, you know, this Ogre camp right here. Though, weirdly enough, that's... Oh, actually, it is available right here. So you could get things like Maniers. There is a ridiculous amount of power. And in terms of selling territory, you have Nakai over here. So he's going to get a vassal in this settlement initially. So you can start trading settlements to that vassal. And because of the way that vassal works, you can get an enormous amount of gold through that kind of trade. So Gelt literally is supreme, at least in terms of the sheer amount of bullshit gold that he can generate in a campaign. And if you do get him back in the Empire and restart claiming territory, you can get that territory to a very, very high level very quickly. If there is a downside in this campaign, so the power is there, the flexibility is there, the inner roster is there. If there is a downside in this specific campaign, you don't have as much growth as Karl Franz, nor do you have as powerful units as Elspeth, but that's not necessarily the most important thing. The downside really is that the campaign can feel a bit one-dimensional. Like, your early game is very easy. You don't necessarily have the as much choice as you might think. Like, yeah, you have that early game choice between staying in Cathay or the Empire, but beyond that, but even that choice, really, you can delay that choice. You should delay that choice because it's going to benefit you if you do delay it a bit. So your early game kind of feels a bit one-dimensional, and then the mid-late game, you're so ridiculously powerful that you'll steamroll through everything. So if you're looking for an Empire campaign where you want that steamroll experience, Gelt is a really good choice for that. But admittedly, it can feel samey if you're playing it multiple times, and can feel a bit boring, you know, if you want that higher level of challenge. But Gelt is a great campaign, though. In many ways, it's just that kind of lack of challenge, and really, although you technically have choices, as I said, like the adventure he's on, they don't necessarily feel as impactful as some other things that are available in other campaigns. Next up, we have Elspeth von Draken, another mage lord of the Empire, though once starting in the Empire was known as a tier 2 city. And with the shooting range already built, so you can start getting pistoliers immediately. There's also a barracks over here in this settlement, so if you could pick that up, that would give you access to things like spearmen very quickly in a campaign. So you can potentially get spearmen very quickly. You do start with the ability of getting pistoliers. You can get handgunners. You can get outriders. You can get a whole bunch of different things available in this campaign from the very beginning. You do start with an engineer hero, so you don't have to worry too much about getting the artillery building at tier 2, though you can also get that very, very quickly in your campaign as well. Elspeth's campaign, she does start in the middle of the Empire, but it's a bit of a weird campaign. Let me explain. Elspeth is heavily focused on dealing with vampires. Like faction effects, she gets research rate, upkeep to gunnery units, and double experience gain for artillery and gunnery units. But if we look at her lord effects, she gets immunity to vampiric attrition, cooldown for Lore of Death magic, the Arcwalker ability, which gives her a good amount of durability in combat, for caster lord, emphasis on that. She reduces battle healing cap, she reduces wins of magic cost for Lore of Death spells for herself, of course, or reserve capacity, recruitment cost, hero capacity for engineers, and upkeep for gunnery units, Darkwalker improvement to Living Darkness as a passive ability, right? You still have Darkwalker, but you get passive negation of magical weapons and physical resistance. She has regeneration, she has a good wound recovery time, and she gets a Purple Sun benefit in terms of wins and magic cost. On top of that, she has the easiest access to Fyodor Bruckner in the sense that the quest for Fyodor Bruckner will be available earlier for her than in other campaigns, though realistically, depending on how you handle the stable situation, it may take about roughly the same time, or it might even be slower depending on which campaign you're talking about and how you approach it. You do get these kind of buffs, these banners, ancillaries, right? So these kind of benefits, you get flaming attacks, or you get vigor loss reduction and regeneration for assigned lord or hero, or you get the Doomfire Ring, which gives fire resistance and the Burning Head ability. So a decent amount of power with respect to that. Only 2 items, though, available in her campaign compared to the sheer amount of items that Gelt can get. But here's a weird aspect about Elspeth's campaign. See, her entire campaign is built around the idea of the gunnery skull, right? So the gunnery skull gives you all kinds of benefits to gunnery units. So be it infantry, cavalry, mortars, cannons, hellblasters, hellstorms, steam tanks, and landships. That's faction-wide. Then you have the Amethyst Armory, which gives you unique units focused on using Lore of Death that are Amethyst Ironsides, Amethyst Outriders, Landships, and Hellstorm Rocket Batteries. Those are really good, but here's the crazy part. You need a lot of schematics gained from a battle in order to make that work. Now, you gain schematics in 2 ways. One, you fight a battle and kill units with your own gunnery units. It has to be your own gunnery units. Or you fight races, factions, that can recruit gunnery units. It doesn't matter if they have gunnery units or not in an army. You'll still gain an extra post-battle loot option, be it with settlements or field battles where you can get extra schematics. So, as ridiculous as this might sound, while it seems that Elspeth is focused on fighting Vlad, and she's really good at fighting Vlad, don't make no mistake on that, her real capability in terms of power in a campaign actually will come from fighting other Empire factions, the Dwarves, Vampire Coast, and even Ogres, because Ogres do have gunpowder units. So technically you can get away without fighting the Empire, but out of the races I just mentioned, the one race she's actually really good at is fighting the Empire. You look at Stirland, you look at Averheim, they're just ripe for the taking. And unlike, say, Karl Franz, who has a limitation in terms of like attacking Imperial factions or confederating them for diplomacy, you have no care in the world about that. Hell, you might just want to attack the Imperial Secessionist over here. This is, by the way, using a mod that makes it so Karl has to deal with the Imperial Secessionist even when you're not playing him, because it actually makes him more powerful and it's a bit more interesting for him. Like, I understand why he removed these guys in Warhammer 2, but for AI Karl, because he was getting pulverized, but things have changed since then. This is Mix's mod that I'm using over here. I forgot to turn it off. That's on me. But still, Elspeth has that kind of weird dynamic in a campaign available to her, and these gunnery units are really powerful. Do you need them? Not necessarily so, but it's the whole shtick she has going for her in her campaign. So it's a bit weird of a campaign dynamic. It is a fairly easy campaign, and you could consider it a very linear campaign. Just go beat the shit out of Vlad, because you absolutely can beat the shit out of Vlad in a way no one else can as quickly and as efficiently as Elspeth can. and get a lot of gunpowder units. But the problem I find is just that weird dynamic. On top of that, she does have the Gardens of Moor. Now, the Gardens of Moor do give her two significant benefits. One, they allow her to teleport every couple of turns across Imperial territory. You can set up one of these in neutral or friendly Imperial territory factions. So if you get vision with Gelt in Cafe and you're not at war with him, you could set up one in Cafe and go over there if you want to. So that gives you campaign flexibility, and doesn't just apply to there. It works with Volkmar, it works with Marcus Wolfhard. So you can use the Gardens more to have a good amount of campaign flexibility and go beat up other people around the world. That is absolutely good. The other benefit of the Gardens more is that they can allow you to recruit wizards focused on Lore of Death, but each of that garden more, you have to choose one kind of benefit, but the most significant is the wizard one, because each of them increases your wizard capacity, all your mage capacity or battle wizard capacity by 1. So you do need to get a structure to get battle wizards, but once you have a garden more, once you start getting out guards more, you can end up with a ridiculous amount of mages. You do have to train them through a regular structure, unlike Gelt, but you do have that significant capacity. And it's kind of crazy to think that Elspeth is not just about gunnery units. She's actually really good with magic as well. Not in the same way as Gelt. Gelt has far more powerful spells, but you may have infinite winds of magic. There's a particular upgrade in the Amethyst Armory for Amethyst Hellstorm rocket batteries that makes it so they effectively generate infinite winds of magic in a battle. Well, as long as there is enemies to kill. That ends up being pretty damn ridiculous when you start considering the potential that you do have over there from a military standpoint. Bit weird. Like Gelt, she does have the ability of getting Electric Count State Troopers through 7,500 gold. She doesn't have the same kind of gold as Gelt, but she does have certainly a far more powerful army than Gelt has access to. I mean, she starts with Null Iron Sire. She starts with not only a Hellstorm like Gelt, but also a Great Cannon unit, which is very significant, and she starts with an Engineer, which is really useful, because you want to get an Engineer as high of a level as possible to get, Mastery of Ballistics, Triangulation, Mercurial Shot, and then, all kinds of different benefits that an Engineer has, including restock. So, great deal of power in terms of gunpowder, great deal of artillery power, unique units, just the Ikit Claw of the Empire. Literally, she even has battlefield nukes. Not as powerful as Ikit Claw, but far more plentiful. If Ikit Claw is using strategic nuclear weapons in a battle, which maybe you shouldn't, Elspeth is using tactical nuclear weapons or cruise missiles with nuclear weapons attached to them. That was actually a thing, by the way. It still exists to this very day. So yeah, Elspeth is just pretty ridiculous, but I admit I do find her campaign weird. To me personally, it's actually the least appealing of the free campaigns. I appreciate what they're trying to do with her character, but I think it kind of didn't necessarily work out if the incentive of your campaign is getting schematics, but you don't really gain that many schematics by fighting your natural foes, which is, vampires, greenskins, chaos. You do gain them from fighting Skaven, not that there's many of those in the actual Empire. What, Skaven? They don't exist in the Empire. That's just a myth. But yeah, that's Elspeth's campaign. There's a lot of strength over here, don't get me wrong on that. It's just a personal preference on that subject. Last but not least, it is Emperor Karl Franz. And unlike Elspeth and Gelt, who are competing for the prize of who can destroy the Empire fastest for their own power and glory, Karl Franz is just trying to build it up very patiently. Like a kid stuck in a room with two cats that are cosplaying as Mike Tyson while he's trying to build a Lego set. The cats obviously being Gelt and Elspeth. Well, you can also consider Festus, Vlad, Draika, Kazrak, and a couple of others being a problem in your campaign. But Karl Franz does have a great deal of power to use in the campaign, and I do think he has the most interesting campaign out of the bunch. Not necessarily the most powerful, but from my perspective, the way this campaign plays out is actually very interesting. See, one of the inherent powers that the Empire as a race has is the Noble trait. This is available for Lords, this is available for Heroes. You can use the load save character system to load up a Lord with this trait. And if you're playing Karl Franz, you can just load a Lord and Altdorf, move him into the river right here, and then back in Altdorf again, and you can then construct your capital to tier 2 in 2 turns as opposed to the 3 that it would normally take. That is already a pretty good advantage to begin with. But Karl Franz takes this a step further because of his faction capabilities that only he has access to. So in terms of faction effects, he has access to the elector count system, he is immune to diplomatic penalties from Empire factions or Imperial regions. He gains 25% extra allegiance points, so that means he can get access to allied units faster, especially useful if you're considering getting some infantry from Kislev or getting access to some artillery from the dwarves or flying units from the dwarves or flamethrowers from the dwarves. He also gets a 5 growth benefit per allied faction. And because of his starting position, he actually does have a decent number of people he can pick from as allies. So just ignore the fact that you have all these electric counts and you can ally them. You do have Karazakarak, you have vision with them. You have Bretonia, you have vision with them, and you have good relations. You have the Ice Court, and you have vision with them. So that's already 3 factions that are your natural allies. That's a 15 growth benefit, provided, of course, you do end up allying them. And that's at least 15 growth. But then we have to talk about the electoral machination system. There's a bunch of benefits over here. This is based on Jan Bo's Matters of State mechanic. But with electoral machinations, you get a bunch of benefits like cheaper recruitment, faster recruitment, replenishing electric count, state troopers, giving experience. Guaranteeing confederation with electric counts, but this can also be upgraded to apply to any imperial faction on the campaign map, because you can get Emperor of the Empire as an upgrade over here for electric counts, through prestige. If you gain 7,500 prestige to spend over here, it takes 1 turn to get Conclave of Light and another turn to get Emperor of the Empire, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I am. But the very important benefit here is he has opened the gate. So every 3 turns, he can give a region, or rather a province, a population surplus point. This gets upgraded to 2 population surplus points when you do get Emperor of the Empire. This is ridiculously strong when you're thinking about the inherent growth benefit that Karl Franz does have, combined with that population surplus, combined with that instant build ability through the noble mechanic. Because see, Elspeth and Gelt can get the instant build as well, but they're not going to be able to take advantage of it in the same way as Karl Franz does have. So effectively, if you're playing a Karl Franz campaign, especially because of the design of Reichland as a province with force elements, you can get to tier 5 fastest of all the Imperial factions. The growth plus instant construction plus population surplus equals a significant win from that perspective. And Reichland is great from other perspectives as well. You do get a free mage as Karl Franz on turn 2. It is randomized, so you're not necessarily going to get the best mage. But just having a free magic user so you don't have to build that tower on turn 2 is a benefit. You don't have the ability of building a tower on turn 2 anyway, or at tier 2 in Altdorf regardless, but you do have these unique landmarks over here. So you get the Altdorf Colleges of Magic, you get the Castle Reichsguard, and you get the Imperial Palace. These are all very substantial benefits through these landmarks. The one question you're going to have to deal with is money. But see, Karl's diplomacy benefit and the kind of vision he shares with factions, it's not just like, oh, you get a growth benefit. No, it's also really an economic benefit in your campaign, because what you can do if you're playing Karl Franz is just go to a couple of factions just from the very beginning and declare war on their enemies and gain a bunch of money from the very beginning of your campaign. And that will also kickstart your diplomatic relations with these factions, so you do actually start with more money in Karl's campaign. And because of his prime strategic position over here in Altdorf, combined with the fact that this area right here, or Altdorf itself and Marienburg, are both caravan destinations, well, you kind of end up realizing that the amount of money you can make in this campaign through those kind of declarations of war is pretty significant. You might need to maintain 4 armies or 5 armies to really take advantage of instant construction, but you can make it work, and it's really fun to do so, having to balance your economy on that level to try and grow as quickly as possible. You don't need to do it, but it's incredibly beneficial to do so. Then you have replenishment in neutral territory. This is pretty substantial, so you have diplomatic immunity to diplomatic trespassing. Then you have that replenishment benefit, which is pretty great, especially early on in the campaign, but even later on. Minus 20% upkeep for Electric Count State Troopers, and 5% weapon strength and missile damage per experience rank for all Electric Count State Troopers. This includes things like the really, really good Eldred's Guard, which you get from Solent. Or it gives you that kind of benefit for mortars that have no friendly fire. So yeah, these guys are, or Caraber Greatswords, just all kinds of benefits across the board over there. Then his special skill line. Well, he has a couple of things. First off, he has Leader of Men at rank 17, which gives you an Electric Count State Trooper capacity of +1. You have the hardest time of unlocking State Troopers, but you also have the biggest benefits from getting State Troopers. Because you can get an extra pull, and there's actually an electoral machination that replenishes the State Troopers instantly in their recruitment pool. So Karl Franz is really about kind of trying to make those State Troops work. He gets extra Lord recruit rank in general, unit experience gain for his army, various benefits to Great Swords and Reichsguard, Vigor loss reduction for all Electric Count State Troopers, armor for State Troopers, leadership, and missile strength. Then he gets an upkeep benefit, hero capacity for captains, hero recruit rank for captains, 50 growth in his province, local control +5. That's, like, again, he has a faction benefit to growth. He has a Lord skill line benefit to growth that is actually very substantial. Like 50 growth is an insane amount of growth that you can get in a province, because it's actually more than a tier 3 growth building, and if we compare it to a provincial capital, it's the same as a tier 5 provincial capital. Karl Franz is a walking provincial capital over there. It's ridiculous. Then weapon strength, perfect vigor, and unbreakable. So he is really good at buffing your entire empire, and he's actually really good at doing one thing, conquering Bretonnia. This may seem a bit ridiculous, but Karl's campaign is not just about the empire in itself, though obviously you will be pushed in that direction. But see, Bretonnia is a very questionable area of the campaign map. On one hand, it's really good because it does have a bunch of different provinces, so you get provincial capitals, which allows access to higher tier recruitment of units, all that. But actually growing these settlements for many factions is an annoyance because there's only 2 settlements, so the amount of growth you can get is limited. Well, not for Karl Franz. Not for Mr. Karl Franz. So he ends up absurdly strong as a result of that. When you combine the recruitment benefits, the growth benefits, the population surplus benefits, the guaranteed confederation in his campaign, you end up with an absolutely crazy campaign. And again, guaranteed confederation with all imperial factions. That includes Gelt, Volkmar, and Marcus Wolfhard. So you just need to send someone to gain vision with them. With Gelt, it's actually easier than the others because all you need to do is get a Kafang caravan to travel through your territory like Miaoying, Xiaoming, get an alliance with them eventually, and you can do so through, the Electric Count machinations, diplomatic talks, which uses prestige instead of influence for extra diplomacy. So you can guarantee that kind of alliance and then guarantee that confederation through prestige. And you gain a good amount of prestige through Bao. Like, consider this early game fight, the very first fight. This gives you 264. A full stack of troops will give you more, far more. It might be a bit limited early on in the campaign, but once you get the ball rolling, and you'll get the ball rolling very quickly given the number of enemies you're dealing with, it ends up being disgustingly powerful. And while you may have a more limited army, a more limited situation than other campaigns, again, it's all about building things up, getting that power over time, unlocking those units, making things work, and there's so many different ways of making things work in a Karl Franz campaign. It's disgusting even. Like, seriously, it is disgusting the amount of empire building capability that Karl Franz does have. The amount of campaign power that he does have. So, in conclusion, and I shouldn't forget to mention it, he also gets a bunch of different items and benefits. So he gets 2 weapons. He gets one at 7, one at 12, a silver seal at 17, and then he also has all these electric counts. So once he takes like Midland or Marienburg or Talabayam, one way or another, you not only get the electric count state troopers, but you also get a title for that electric count. If you get all the seats, you can summon the electric counts every 35 turns. Yeah, that is a very long cooldown, unfortunately. But it is an incredibly powerful benefit all the same. But it also crucially gives you, each of these gives you a minus upkeep benefit for electric count state troopers, as well as other benefits as well. So you end up with very cheap electric count state troopers, more electric count state troopers in a long campaign than anyone else, and these sweet, sweet, sweet rune fangs. So in conclusion, who's the best? Well, from my personal perspective, I do like playing Karl Franz the most, but it's all about pros and cons. Karl Franz is the best from a campaign perspective, though he doesn't have the best climate availability, nor does he have the teleportation that Elspeth has, nor does he have the capability of just summoning a hero stack out of thin air the way Gelt does. So pros and cons on that, but if from a short campaign perspective, Elspeth and Gelt are better. Gelt in particular has a ridiculously easy campaign with a significant level of power and the best climate situation. Elspeth has the strongest army. Karl may not have the strongest army, but he does have a lot of items, a lot of campaign power, a lot of customization he can do in terms of, like, giving titles to various generals in his campaign and guaranteeing those confederations, as opposed to dealing with the baseline system of confederation the same way Elspeth and Gelt have to deal with. So all of them are very good. Pros and cons. For a short campaign, I'd recommend Elspeth if you want something more interesting, or if you want a safe first mover approach, you can go with Gelt with the potential of a huge payoff. But if you want a really interesting campaign with a lot of with a lot of things to consider in dynamic campaign, I would go with Karl Franz. That's my perspective on the subject of what the best Empire Legendary Lord is. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you prefer? I'm sure a lot of people will answer Elspeth for various reasons. Stay tuned.